1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Monday show live. Sorry, we're late. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Monday show live. Royal Blue podcast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast. This is the Monday show, the first show of the week. It is the 28th of July. We are live and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got Joe Thomas and Gav Buckland. Joe, first off, return after a good week off. Feel refreshed?
I'm not quite refreshed, but yeah, no, glad to be back in.
Good stuff, good stuff. Gav, it's just hold Gav's hand up for him that it is Gav's fault that we are a little bit late. I do no, it's fine to be late. It's fine to be late.
My legal advisor will be in touch with you.
It's okay.
Over that claim.
We'll let you off. I just know our audience
likes the degree of lateness may not necessarily be down to me.
No, so our audience likes us to be on time, but it's fine. As long as you're here is the main thing.
Some people do dispute that, but yeah.
All good?
Fine. Yeah, fine, yeah.
Stay up to watch the game on Saturday?
I saw 80 minutes of it, yeah.
Did you just have enough after that? After that 80 minutes thing, can't be bothered anymore?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, well, we will take a look back at the 3-0 defeat to Bournemouth in Everton's Premier League Summer Series opener. We will discuss the latest on transfer news as well, and a recent interview that David Moyes did with The Athletic, where he said Everton are perhaps struggling to bring in the players that they want at this moment in time. We'll also take a look at some injury news and concerns with that. Plenty more on the show to get through, as always. Give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We are live, so get your comments in, get your questions in, and I will read out as many as possible with the time that we do have. Joe, we'll start with you. Obviously, Bournemouth was the Premier League Summer Series opener. Everton started well without scoring a goal, but obviously David Moyes did that to field a bit of a makeshift back line. I mean, ironically, central defence is probably an area of the pitch where Everton are quite stocked, but we've got 3 players out injured. But yeah, makeshift back line, and it obviously told, in the second half.
Yeah. I mean, it was a sobering experience. And I mean, I know that Everton played pretty well in the first half, but if I'm honest, I thought the sobering experience started an hour before kickoff when the team news came out. I can't take a huge amount of positives from that on Saturday night. I tweeted to this effect when I saw the lineups drop. If you saw Everton there, they named a makeshift squad, let's say the least. And you look at the bench, and there was just very little on there. And they just about get to 9 players, but they had 2 goalkeepers there. They had an under-18s. I think they had 3 under-21s. Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at it, we know that they're threadbare. And, of course, if you take James Tarkowski, Jared Branthwaite and Michael Keane out, that obviously makes a huge difference. But for me, when we look at, and I know we're going to come on to transfer activity and the type of players that Everton are going to be looking at, when I look for this season, the type of clubs that you would, if Everton are to make progress, the type of clubs that they probably need to start trying to catch up with, the likes of Bournemouth and Brentford and Fulham and a few of those. Bournemouth have a good squad. They've looked good and they've been on a pretty sustained and quite impressive and well-organised squad building exercise for a couple of years. What they have there makes sense under a very, very good manager. But you looked at the amount of players that they had there, the options that they had there, and you compared that to Everton. yeah, there was no
Yeah.
there was no comparison, was there? And the difference was quite stark. And I think seeing that between a club that, between Everton, where Everton are now, and a club that they would hope to kind of maybe like gain on this season, that was quite difficult to see, I think.
Just on Joe's point then, Gav, obviously you can speak about the game if you want as well and whatever, but it is interesting. Bournemouth clearly ahead of us, but surely they're ahead of us in the time that they've had to put that squad together. David Moyes' mandate last season was to avoid relegation, and he did that with flying colours, effectively overachieved, some might say. Now, we played the team who Joe just mentioned there, Bournemouth, well ahead of us, probably a couple of better players, bigger squad. So, you can't really compare, I don't think, the two. Yeah, Bournemouth are a team that we should be targeting, but if they're ahead of us in that, got to come back onto it. Oh, sorry, the lights have just gone off in the room, so I don't know if that's just changed anything in the studio. Sorry, go on, Gav.
Yeah, I can only say what Joe said. It just shows you the gap that we've got to fill because of the amount of players that we've lost, hasn't it? Really. I tell you what, you would never have thought that 10 years ago. We've got to catch up with Bournemouth, would you? That just shows you how things have gone in for both teams, not just us, for Bournemouth in that time. Yeah, and I think Joe's right. Is that the game on Saturday? You just seen what was on both teams' squad list beforehand, and you're thinking this is going to be a difficult afternoon. This shows you where both clubs are, especially when they brought 5 players off the bench in the second half. I think Semenyo was one of them, wasn't it? Yeah, and I think you can't say more. A lot of hard work needs to be done, and it's taking place at the moment. It's just not had the rewards of that. And it's a solitary reminder of the job that Moyes has got just to get us to, I don't know, about 4 or 5 little groups in the Premier League. You'd say Bournemouth are one up from us probably, just to get up. Just to get up into the next level is going to provide the challenge for us, isn't it? In terms of the numbers of players we need, and then getting them to gel into the squad and all that type of stuff. So it wasn't surprising. I mean, I wasn't shocked on what you've seen. Did you learn anything from Saturday?
Yeah, we're back now. Sorry, lights.
Yeah.
But I think
did you learn anything from Saturday?
Not really. No, I think this is my point though. Let Joe come back in on now as well. Like, I think we're not really close to Bournemouth, are we? In terms of like our building process, we're literally only just starting out. Yeah. So comparing it to one standalone game is quite harsh, even though it was a bit of an embarrassing 3-0 defeat.
Yeah, I'm not comparing it to one game, and I think we're probably getting our wires crossed a little bit here, because this isn't having a go at Moyes.
No, I'm not saying you win. No.
For the last 6 months, Moyes has done a fantastic job. What I'm saying is Moyes has come in and kind of set the target to move up the table, and I think that we would all like to see Everton move up the table. But the reality is that that's going to be a challenge, and the challenge is because the gap between us and the clubs that we want to chase is so dramatic. And I think you have 6 weeks of the summer, and there's a case to be made that Everton are perhaps making progress, strides on some of the other clubs with the business they've done. And you think that with Bournemouth, you could very easily go into that game at the weekend and go, well, look, Bournemouth didn't finish in Europe, so they're only a couple of places above Everton last season. They've lost their goalkeeper, they've lost their left back, they've lost their centre back. So they've lost 3 of their starting 11 from a very good season last season. And yet, look what they can still field in comparison to Everton. Philip Billing wasn't involved in that season last season. He went away and won Serie A. He starts for Everton, and he wasn't even in their plans for last season. And it just kind of it just shows you the difference there. And yet, that comes from several years, a couple of years of stability. And it isn't long-standing stability in terms of Anthony Iraola. It was only it was less than 2 years ago, I suspect. I forget me times, right? When Sean Dyche and Anthony Iraola were meeting each other at Goodison in that October with Everton having not won a game at home all season. Bournemouth having not won just before the international break. And we're there thinking, if whoever loses this might lose their job. Obviously, that didn't happen because Everton won and Iraola stayed in it. So, it does also show you what's possible in a relatively short space of time as well. But look, no one's going to have any. Everton aren't going to get any freebies because they're fresher on their journey, on their rebuild journey this season, are they? But it just shows how much work there is to do. And I think that just the mere fact of seeing those team sheets when you're looking at them, you've got Tyler Onyango, who's probably going to end up at Stockport this summer. You've got Aled Thomas, you've got Justin Clark. He's probably he's looked really good in pre-season, but he's still probably too young really to go out on loan. So
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's the competition there, isn't it? You know, and as I say, that makes it quite difficult, and I think that it probably adds, you know, the perspective to some of Moyes' comments around the amount of transfer activity that needs doing. So,
I mean, pre-season results, gather, you know, cause for concern. We can come on to transfers and everything that, you know, the squad rebuild and stuff in a minute. But obviously, I know we beat Port Vale behind closed doors, but the games that have been on show for the fans to see, the results haven't been great.
No, as an aside, Philip Billing should have been an Everton player years ago, shouldn't he? He's one of them players, but we've seen, like, you know, he should be playing for us, you know, in terms of his profile and what you could have bought him for. Definitely somebody we should have had years ago. Well, we've had this conversation before, haven't we? I think a run of poor results, possibly.
It's not going to get any easier.
No. I know it isn't. A run of poor results, possibly. But that's what I said a couple of weeks ago. It's all about getting the blends right and getting the fitness right and all that type of stuff off the pitch and making sure you're prepared right, which Moyes, with all his experience, would expect him to. And he's spoken about that, hasn't he, last week? So I'm not really bothered about results in that way. I mean, say Saturday we got beat 3-0. If it was a Premier League game, you get beat 3-0, you would expect to think, oh, we've taken a proper pace down there, haven't we? You know, we've been under the caution, and that wasn't the case, was it? What made the difference was they brought a few players on near the end, and two of their goals were defensive howlers, really, by Everton players. So it wasn't a 3-0 where you got there was a massive gap between the sides in the first half, wasn't it? It was 50-50, wasn't it? Argue that maybe we had the best of the half. So on that basis, in terms of performance-wise, I expected the way we performed, I would expect that, wouldn't it? You know, reasonably good 45 minutes. Second half, when we haven't got reinforcements and they have, we're going to struggle. So it's a reflection of that, really, than the players on the pitch performing badly. And so I'm not really bothered on that aspect. What I'm bothered about really is the integration of getting players in and integrating them in time for the start of the season. I know the transfer window runs to the start of September, and making sure that we've got enough players by the time we play Leeds to that we've got like the basis of a squad and a team that we want for the rest of the campaign. So in that context, I'm not going to take too much notice of results, but I can see why in a few bad results back to back can get supporters worried. It's more the stuff off the pitch that I'm worried about. So there's a classic example of that. Martinez's season. His first year we done really well, didn't we? We finished fifth. Okay, 72 points. That summer off the pitch was a complete and utter catastrophe, and I've never forgiven Martinez for this. There was absolutely no pre-season organised. He was in Brazil for 6 weeks. They'd obviously not thought through the transfer strategy, the players' fitness, all that type of thing. That the type of what I'm talking about here. And because of that, Martinez in the summer ruined all the progress that Moyes had made and he had made in his first season. We started the season, unfit, undercooked, and we lost Leeds in the first 2 games. And Martinez never recovered from that. And that's the type of thing, I think we wanted to play another game at Goodison, and we got told we played at Tranmere because we couldn't play at Goodison. We played Celta Vigo at Tranmere.
More memories, the whole better
thing. The whole thing was completely disorganised chaos from Martinez's perspective, because of his own ego, kept him in Brazil for 6 weeks. And that's the example of the thing that, when something goes wrong off the pitch, where you suffer at the start of the next season. But I don't see that this season with Moyes. He's got a plan in place, and the training and the preparation is going to be, you would expect it's going to be really effective. So as long as we do that, then results, okay. It'd be nice to get a couple of wins. You might get a couple of wins, but it's not the be all and end all. The bad preparation, like we saw in Martinez's first full summer with the club in 2014, that's what worries me. And that's what worried me at the time. You could see where it was going.
I mean, we can do a little preview on West Ham at the end of the pod, Joe, but obviously, is the defensive injury woes likely to improve ahead of Wednesday, or are we still looking at another makeshift team defence come West Ham game?
Yeah, well, obviously Branthwaite's in England, so he's not going to be out there, and Tarkowski, Moyes has kind of hinted that there might be potential for him to be involved on this tour, but I think that's probably unlikely. I mean, he's had a serious injury and he's not going to want to risk him, given how important he is. Whether or not Keane's back, I'm not sure. I've haven't caught up with Chris on the extent of Keane's injury, but yeah, that was clearly a makeshift back five, wasn't it? Like there were a lot of players playing out of position, but again, they're playing out of position because Everton don't have the players to come in and work as backup, and that's it. Other clubs like Bournemouth do, and that's where Everton have got to improve over the course of this transfer window. So. Yeah, so it's a difficult one. There was some nice passages of play, and look, Ilman and Dye looked lively, and that chance right on half time for Beto. You just think, if with Beto likely to be the main forward this season, having that starting berth, those type of little links moves, those little passes like Svalkaras can play behind him, he can get behind the last man. If they can be a feature of Everton's play through pre-season and into the new season, then you all of a sudden you stumble across a pattern that could work. Because obviously one of the difficult things of last season where we were moving between Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Beto, when they were kind of the setup for both was different, wasn't it? Because obviously Calvert-Lewin played a lot of his back to goal, whereas Beto's clearly much better when he's running onto a through ball and kind of shoulder barging defenders out of the way. So there were some promising signs, and of course you can't read too much into it, but I just do think that all you had to do was look at the team sheets, and they were a big indication as to the disparity between the sides, what Everton have got to do. And the other thing that I do think is important, again, you mentioned some of Moyes' comments over the weekend earlier on. Look, Everton's season isn't going to be won or lost in pre-season, but it's very clear at the minute that Everton are having a difficult job to sell the project to new signings. That isn't going to get any easier if they go out to America and start losing to, Bournemouth, Man United and West Ham and in games in a fashion where they don't necessarily compete. That's when it does start to matter. Moyes has been very clear, I think, that they want to buy quality. They don't want to spend money for the sake of it. They don't want to bring in players just to flesh out the squad. But the challenge in doing that is you have to get them to buy into the project. And I think that whereas, and I'd probably say I've been guilty of this as well, and thinking that Everton, the players would be able to see the vision at Everton, that Everton had a good... I can understand why players didn't want to move to Everton in January. Moyes was sounding out a lot of players and they're saying, I don't really fancy a relegation battle and all that. The way in which Everton ended that last season, playing pretty good football, getting good results, really positive, climbed up the table, had the big Goodison farewell, we've got the new stadium there, glistening, waiting to move into. I thought perhaps it might be a little bit easier to attract players that want to show a bit of ambition this summer. But clearly Everton are struggling to do that. One of the things that doesn't help is Moyes alludes to this, is they haven't got European football. 9 Premier League clubs do have European football. This is 8 or 9 anyway, including the likes of Palace and Forest, who you'd think that they'd be competing with in some of their markets. And then some of the clubs that don't have Europe, like Man United, obviously they have their own pull. As much as I'd question anybody wanting to go there this summer, you can understand why players would do. And West Ham, who historically have spent quite spent a lot of money in the recent transfer windows, and obviously they're a London-based club as well. Yeah. So that's just kind of my slight concern, that you can kind of explain away a 1-1 draw at Accrington and a narrow defeat at Blackburn because this is just about fitness. Of course it is. But when you end up in a kind of a glamorous summer tournament that's broadcast all across the world, and there's a big fanfare around it because of what the Premier League are trying to do out in America, like if you have a couple of bad performances and bad results there, then all of a sudden some of those players that you're trying to appeal to, it might be, might they take another second thought? That's why I do think this perhaps these games certainly matter more than the ones that they'd played in England before going out there. They're not the be-all and end-all, but it would also be wrong just to say that no one is paying any attention to them.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but ironically, Gav, we had this conversation, or I asked this very question on a pod a couple of weeks back. What is the sell? What is the point? What is the pull of coming to Everton? And, I can't remember what you said, but I think it was along the lines of, obviously, we got the new stadium, new manager, obviously money talks. But clearly we're having this problem in bringing the targets that David Moyes wants to bring in, because it's not like we're just going for quantity over quality, or we're just going for we'll bring him in because he makes up the numbers, etc.
Yeah.
There clearly is, a bit of a disparity, disparity.
There's a gap, isn't it? Yeah.
It's between probably what we think
Yeah.
Everton are worth and what we offer as a club to what the outside world think Everton can offer.
Well, they said about everything to do with any club can't need supporters always have a different view of their own club as what other people from the outside do. We're not alone in that, are we? I'm not sure about the pull of a new stadium, actually. I thought Moyes' comments were illuminating. It's not just the European football for the 9 clubs in the Premier League. It's like if you're buying a player from abroad, they'll have clubs in other countries within Europe, won't they, that they'll think are far more attractive. I think first it goes back to what I always say. If the money's right and you offer the right money to a player, then the heads will be turned, regardless of what's going on elsewhere. That's the first thing. And if you offer the right money to a selling club, that will make a difference. So that's the first thing. I think Moyes himself is an asset as a manager. As a coach, you'd probably, if you were a defender, you'd say you want to play for him. But beyond that, it's just the standard stuff, isn't it? We are a Premier League club. Premier League clubs are big clubs, aren't they? But whatever we say, comparison with the big 6 or whatever, we are in the top 25 clubs British clubs in Europe, will we? Something along them lines, I think. So in European terms, we are a big club in terms of our revenue, and that revenue is going to go up over the next 12 months. So we're not in the backwaters, are we, of football? So that's the type of thing makes us appealing. We are a Premier League club, which is the marquee league on the planet. But what you can't, what's outside your control is what other clubs can offer. You can't control that, can you? And that's what Moyes was talking about. I thought it was quite illuminating when he was talking about European football. He mentioned specifically about it was easy to get players into West Ham, he said, didn't he, when they were in Europe, compared to when they weren't in Europe. And I think that's an important aspect. Our main selling point is we are a long-standing member of the Premier League, and when you look at revenues, one of the biggest clubs in Europe. It's just clubs in Europe compared to a lot of other clubs in the world.
Top 30 for the Deloitte Money League, and they'll go up, probably enter the top 20 this year. So.
Yeah, so that's the type of thing. But ultimately, it comes down to cash, doesn't it? How much? 2 things I always say, isn't it? Cash and where the player wants to play. If you meet them 2 parameters, then you're on your way. I think
it's one of those. I think Everton have got a lot to offer,
yeah.
but I think right now you need a player, unless it's a player coming from the Championship or perhaps a lesser European league or from South America. They have to probably have a little bit of imagination to be able to see that, and that must be difficult if you've got other clubs that can offer you European football and more money going forward. I suspect we're probably in a situation where, look, I mean, things are difficult now, and I think it's going to be a tough summer, but I think Everton will, and you have faith that Moyes will come through this. I can see a scenario where in 3 or 4 months' time there'll be a lot of players that have kind of brushed off the interest of Everton, all of a sudden looking at Everton and going, "Oh, I kind of maybe wish I joined that project." I think they're almost a completely different context, but it's a little bit like, say, Man City before Robinho and after Robinho. Robinho was the big marquee sign that they got that all of a sudden then acted as a catalyst for all the others to join, and then they start pushing up the league and eventually get to where they are now and have been for the last decade, don't you? I'm not saying Everton are going to, in 10 years' time be winning, all conquering and winning everything, but I do think that this is a club on an upward trajectory, and I think we can see the early signs of that, and they're obviously more visible to us because we pay more attention to them. I don't think it will take long for players to see that as well, but we're just in that kind of jarring stage at the minute where they haven't, the tangible evidence isn't quite there for a player that's perhaps choosing between, say, an Everton, a Forest who have got European football and who obviously had a better season last season, a West Ham who might not have European football but are in London, have recently won silverware, and then that's and probably the bigger challenge maybe as we come towards the back end of the window and something I mentioned, but the challenge between Everton attracting the young British players in comparison to Germany, where they can go and which has proved a really good stomping ground for young British talent to go and develop. Those are the kind of the growing pains, really. That's where Everton are in the minute. They're in the growing pains stage, and how they come through that's going to be really fascinating. I think they will, but it's just getting through it in the first place.
I think that was what my point was when I wasn't like trying to interpret anything, but that was what my point was when we were comparing ourselves to Bournemouth. Bournemouth are way ahead of us in terms of their rebuild. I mean, just so everyone knows, for context, Moyes did an interview with The Athletic either yesterday or the day before, and
Friday.
Was it Friday? So basically one of the comments or one of the lines from it was, He said, we've been in for a lot of really good players. Unfortunately, a lot of them have said no at the moment. I mean, Gav, for me, I appreciate fans' frustration. I think there's a lot of people saying, well, he's being too open and honest, but he's just given an explanation. The one thing that stands out for me is that he says, at this moment, and I said this the other day, is that players might still be willing to come to Everton. They're just keeping their options open, hence why things have slowed down just this little bit in time. I mean, do you think as well, with it being a World Cup year, that might be a little bit of a hindrance to Everton, that players who are on the periphery of international squads, they might be waiting for clubs in Europe? Again, we talk about Europe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they can
raise the profile,
so
that type of thing.
They want to apply the trade where they get the most maximum exposure. If that doesn't come off, then Everton might be a realistic target, because at the end of the day, you're still getting big exposure in the Premier
absolutely.
League.
I mean, I think he did mention this. Angus Kim did an interview, didn't he, over the weekend?
Yeah.
And he was speaking about this, wasn't he? And he was saying, I know you always leave yourself as a hostage to force you when you say this, but he said, like, judges on whenever the transfer went, the 2nd of September, is it something like that? Judges on that. And you get the impression at the moment there's lots of, like, circling, and people are circling around each other and just generally seeing what the options are for players. You get the impression, and this is what he said in the interview, that all the business is still done right near the end of the transfer window, isn't it, really, the last 2 or 3 weeks. And as you say, I think when last 2 or 3 weeks of the transfer window, when people's options that they thought were available to them at the end of July are no longer available to them, that actually Everton all of a sudden becomes a very viable option,
especially if you want to play all the time.
Yeah, especially if we are offering the right money to them. So we're not the only club in this position, by the way. I'm not particularly worried about where we are at the moment, because I think the smoke will clear in the next 3 weeks before the start of the season, and I think you'll see a completely different market once we get to by the time the season starts, and I think we'll have a lot more options available to us then, and then we can take from there. And as Joe said, once we get started in the new stage and we've got a few new players in, and Moyes does the same job as did the second half of last season, all of a sudden by October you might be saying, well, actually we should come there. That would have been a good option for me. So yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly worried at this stage. I'd be worried if we're having the same conversation in the 31st of August. But I think it's a good point Joe mentioned about the pre-season games. I think there's 2 ways of looking at the results, isn't it? One from a fitness perspective, like the way I look at it, but the other perspective is from a sort of reputational perspective. That's where they can impact, I suppose, but not particularly worried at this stage about the way things are going.
I think if you're going to agree to participate in a tournament, a lucrative tournament now, such as the Premier League Summer Series, obviously results do matter because of the exposure that you put your club into. I don't know what money Everton are guaranteed to play in that. I don't know what money Everton are guaranteed if they win football matches, but it's a tough one. It's a double-edged sword. Do you just, if you know you're not going to be ready for it, even though you've been invited, do you decline and just go with a different pre-season?
Worse, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't do that.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. So you have to go with it.
From a money perspective, this isn't as lucrative as some of the other trips they've had in previous years. I think the appeal to this is less the amount of money that they will get money for playing in it, but it won't be one of their bigger sums. But it's exposure, because they believe that the North American market is still one that they can have significant success in. So that's why they want to go out there and they're putting on all the fan events and things like that and having some joy with them. But obviously, Everton's potential to grow a foothold in North America has the same potential as it always has done for a long time. But you're only ever going to get so far if you don't start winning games, aren't you? And that's the hurdle they've got to get over, isn't it? So, I
guess, Gav, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, what probably hasn't helped. Now, I'm not saying this is in a player's mind whether they come to Everton or not, but the England manager Thomas Tuchel's comments about Pickford, he preferred him to be playing in Europe. He preferred to be playing in a team higher up the league. That doesn't help Everton when trying to sign players as well, does it?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose so, but I mean, I think Pickford's an exception, isn't he, because he's an established England player. But players know that anyway, don't they? You don't need Tuchel to tell them, actually, if you're going to a club with Champions League potential or in the Champions League, you're it's going to be better for your career. You don't need Tuchel to tell you that, do you? Really, what you would, where you are, the selling point is like, you know, and this is what Moyes has been great at over the years, hasn't he? Certainly in his first spell, is buying the best players from the club below Everton, where you can say, if you come here, and Moyes took a point his track record the first time at Everton, we say, see him here, brought him from a lower league, he was in England international within 2 years or whatever. I think that's a market that actually, ultimately, I think that could be really beneficial to us, really, because that's what Moyes' skill set, I think, is as a manager. So the players don't need to Tuchel to tell them that, do they really? They know that. But as I say,
it might just be that, like say, players are willing to come to Everton. It's just Everton might not be the first choice, which is why things have slowed down.
That's what Moyes has said, hasn't he? You know, but lots of clubs are not the first choice for players, are they? It's not just Everton. There's lots of clubs in the Premier League where players won't go to. So you have to look what's going on in the wider world, don't we? Really, that is if Everton are not the only club who have difficulty attracting players, do they? For lots of different reasons. Our problem is magnified with the fact that there's so many players that we've got to bring in, isn't it? That's making us look a little bit as if we're behind the eight ball, doesn't it? Really, but I'm okay at the moment. I'm reasonably comfortable. I'm expecting the smoke will clear over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll be in a far better position by the time we get to the start of the season.
Sorry, I thought that was the fire alarm going.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
it's not. I think it's a JCB outside.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe should say we signed a player. You know, like should do that at Bramley Moore. Have a horn at Bramley Moore, like signed a player. You know,
Joe.
yeah. Well, you just go out, bellow out across the Mersey every time. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Bit of grey smoke, all that type of thing. You know, yeah, absolutely.
It could be a rare noise.
Stop it!
No, I'm not.
You're miserable.
I'm not. Let's be positive. I am not. You're being miserable.
I'm not miserable.
I'm not being miserable. I'm being very in defence.
I'll be panicking.
I'm not panicking.
You're panicking.
I'm absolutely not panicking.
You look how red you're going.
We've got 5 or 6 weeks end of the transfer window. Is it 5 weeks? Is it something like that? It's a long time now. It's a long time in football terms to buy and sell players, especially when it comes to when people are trying to get rid of players. It's a long time, so I don't think we should be panicking at this moment. As you know,
Gav said we need to sign all these players, a lot of players, and no one's questioning that we do need to bring in more. There's a lot of talk about what Moyes said we need to bring in 9, 10, and then a couple of days later, I think he said, well, we need to bring 7 or 8. I think clarification on that.
Yeah, I think the message was consistent. 9 or 10 by the end of the window, 6 or 7 more, because they've already signed 3.
If you look at things logically, and this is me being positive, by the way, the squad compared to last season, even though it was still short last season, you could argue that it's still very much the same with maybe a couple of upgrades, in my opinion. Now, you've got...
Go on.
Well, I don't see how it's not, because you've got Calvert-Lewin who's left,
right?
Who scored 3 goals last season. You could argue that Tierno Barry is an upgrade on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You've got Decore, who's already left. You've brought in Alcaraz, who's going to play in that position.
Well, Alcaraz was already there at the back end.
Okay, he was, but he didn't. He played alongside Decore on the right hand side sometimes. So Decore gone, Alcaraz is going to come in and be predominantly the number 10. You would expect. We've also got Harrison Armstrong, who barely featured last season, who's going to come to the fore a little bit more.
That's a big assumption, isn't it?
No, but everyone's raving over him, saying if he goes out on loan and it's a mistake. I think obviously we've had a discussion on this. We should wait. Look, there's key areas which obviously need addressing. The right side of the pitch, is non-existent. We definitely need to bring that in.
Yeah.
But in terms of core players, I think Moyes used 25 players. Moyes and Dyche used 25 players in total last season. 6, 7 of those, I think it was 7. Played 5 games or less. So we used a core of 18 players, which we've still got at this moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure about all that. I think when you look at the squad as it stands right now, not as where it's going to get, and obviously, it's not. Ashley Young would be very useful in that squad as it is now. Just wait. Let me
go on.
Would be very useful in that squad as it is now. Abdoulaye Doucouré would be very useful. He would have started on the weekend. Like, he would be very useful. Again, seasoned Premier League player, has the experience. Same as Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You're placing an awful lot of expectation on Tierno Barry and Harrison Armstrong, a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old now who've had consistent minutes in the Premier League. Now, what Everton need to do is get into a position where the squad is strong enough for there to not be that pressure on them, so that they can kind of come in and be gradually exposed to and hopefully grow without having always, not be in a situation where Bournemouth again, we go back to where we were for the first game of 2025 and Everton struggling at Bournemouth. Took 82 minutes to get a shot on target in the defeat at Forest a couple of days earlier, not threatening in the other half of the pitch. At Bournemouth, albeit still 0-0, and at half-time Sean Dyche just turned to 17-year-old Harrison Armstrong. That's not what you want to be doing. And also, obviously, last season, they didn't have the greatest of seasons, but they had two right-wing options in in Jack Harrison and Jesper Lindstrom. So I'm not sure that I could say that the squad is stronger now than it was last season. I expect it to be considerably stronger by the end of the window. And I think that'll be the intention. Of course it will. And I'm not saying that some of those players didn't need to go for the club to move forward, but I'm not quite sure that they're there just yet. I think at the minute there is, Everton have a lot of players who would be good squad players in a decent Premier League squad, but perhaps aren't starting material in what you want to be. If Everton, say Everton are aiming for, say, the top 12 this season to make progress, I think they've got quite a few players who, as I say, if they were on your bench, you'd be happy. But if they're your starting 11, then your expectations would probably fall a little bit. And that just speaks to where we are right now, because the difficulty that they've got is Moyes clearly believes that because they're going after first-team players where they can. That's where they're getting their knockbacks from. They're picking up the likes of Tierno Barry, who's young, who wants to get into the Premier League and make a name for himself. Picking up the likes of Mark Travers, who sees a better opportunity to be a backup goalkeeper here. Picking up Charlie Alcaraz, who's already been and seen and experienced Everton. Those younger players that are kind of coming in and they've got trying to make a name for themselves. They're the ones that Everton can get right now. But what they need to add on top of that is the quality. They need at least probably a centre midfielder, at least a right winger, and probably a right back, and then a few more bits and pieces just to challenge. So,
let me just come back to Jonas and you can jump in, Gab. Just to jump in on the Decore one, you say he would have been a useful player to Everton right now. I don't disagree with you, but you're only saying that on the basis that he's there just to make up the numbers.
But
you
wouldn't be just making up the numbers, would he? Because he'd be playing. That's
so he's
the
just there.
Opposite of just making up the numbers.
He's there to make up the numbers. What did he contribute to goals and assists last season?
Well, he scored a last-minute winner at Nottingham Forest.
He scored three goals.
He scored a goal against Manchester United.
Is that worth $100,000 a week?
But that's not what I'm saying, and that's not my argument, is it?
But my argument is bad things aren't as bad as what they're being perceived.
Is that the squad now is stronger than it was last season, and I'm saying that's not quite.
I haven't said that. I said it's not as bad as what people are believing it to be.
I think it's what you said earlier on in this.
I said we've had upgrades or potential upgrades in certain areas of the pitch.
I think in the long term we've got players that can grow into better players.
And that's what we're looking for long term. It's not about a summer series pre-season game against Bournemouth, is it?
But I mean, the whole context of this conversation has been on what we're going to do this season and where we're going to be in a couple of weeks. You can't change the goalpost to,
I'm not changing the goalpost.
In 18 months, Harrison Armstrong may well be a much better player than Abdoulaye Doucouré was at the end of where he was. Obviously, they're different type of players anyway. Same with Tierno Barry. Yeah. But in terms of where Everton are right now, I'd say that there are holes.
Based on that point then, where you just said he may, obviously Harrison Armstrong may be a better player a year down the line, but based on the decision to allow Doucouré to leave, would have been the right decision a year down the line, wouldn't it?
Well, I still think it's the right decision for Doucouré to leave now. That's not in dispute. But your starting point was Everton stronger now than they were previously. I'm saying they haven't filled in some of the holes of what they've left yet.
They need
to do that.
But
I'm saying planning on doing
what they've replaced I think is better than what they've had.
I'm not sure about that. I mean,
what's the point in the players that we've bought then?
Well, no, because there are different expectations for different players. They haven't brought in Tieno Barry to come in and be the number 9 right now, have they? Obviously, the hope is that he grows into that and he challenges better and he becomes a player that can grow with Everton and increase his value and hopefully become a world beater as Everton make the climb at the table that we want them to do, doesn't he? Like Harrison Armstrong Harrison Armstrong was Everton's player last season as well. But I mean, there's a world of difference in the experience that Harrison Armstrong can offer compared to an Abdoulaye Doucouré. Now, I think Harrison Armstrong's a wonderful player. I hope he stays with Everton's first team this season. I think he's going to be a real asset, and I'm really excited for him. And I think he's an absolute baller. And I think, to be honest, he was. I wrote that he was the best performer.
You
against
justify my
Accrington.
point.
But there's a difference between being an incredibly talented prospect and being Premier League ready, experienced and ready to go for 38 games of a Premier League season right now.
No, I know. I think
massive difference.
Look, I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is that
But
in
then
terms
why?
of because numbers wise, we're not really any different or worse off than what we've had previously, other than the right side of the pitch. We obviously need a right winger, and priority wise, Everton needs to go all out and spend money on a right winger. I would even go, obviously, a right back as well. I don't think Nathan Patterson's up for it. But what I'm saying, from the business that we've done now, we've upgraded on what we've already had. Look, Dominic Calvert-Lewin couldn't even get a game because he was always injured.
They haven't upgraded on the right because they haven't brought in anything else on the right. And they haven't upgraded at right back because they haven't brought anyone at right back.
I've just said that. I've just said they need to upgrade on the right and they need to upgrade on the full back and a right wing.
So where are they stronger?
As the number 10 and up front.
Well, the number 10 with the number 10 that they had at the second half of last season.
Yeah, but it was a loan deal he's brought in, but Alcaraz didn't play as the number 10 inside. Alcaraz started the game against Newcastle last game of the season.
Might be better off moving on.
We will. I want to bring Gavin
down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Okay. In terms of Everton,
I tell you what, you've got about 5 minutes of Twitter clips on that. Yeah.
Everton's core 14, 15 players was, it was on the verge of, form-wise last season, challenging for a Europa League place under Moyes.
That's sort of what you're saying in the basis that if you take the 10 or 12 they released last year, once you got rid of the 7 or 8 who didn't contribute.
Well, the 10 or 12, 6 of them, or a lot of them didn't even play a single game.
Yeah, no, that's what I think you're coming from. But that's not the point, is it? The point is, we don't want a sort of similar squad to last season. Your argument only works if our squad last year was acceptable and was good, and we're now saying we've got a better squad than the same level of squad as last season. The fact is, as you just pointed out, we got 7, 8 people in the squad of 25 who didn't contribute, but we don't want that this season, do we? We want 25 players who can contribute. Yeah. And that's what we're looking for, really. I don't think it'll work in our favour to say, we've just got a marginal improvement over last year's squad, so it's all good, guys. We want to be saying we've got like a 50% improvement in the squad both in terms of numbers and capability. That's the thing, isn't it, really? And we're some way off that, that we hopefully had that by the 2nd of September. I do think in certain parts, I think like Travers a good signing. I haven't read Moyes' comments. I'm still gutted we let Ashley Young go, because he was saying what an influence he was in the dressing room, and I do think that was.
But he's ended up at Ipswich, Gav. No one else wanted him in the Premier League.
Hang on a minute, but he was at Everton. He's combative today, aren't he? Yeah. Actually, this is good. And I would have kept Young. I've absolutely kept him. So yeah, I don't. It's all right saying it's a little bit better than last season, but we want it to be considerably better than last season.
I don't disagree with it.
I'm
just saying what we've done so far, I believe there to be upgrades on it.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily mean the squad's better up anyway. We're not going to go down that road. There's a lot of work to be done. We know that, don't we? To make it to make it a considerably better squad than last season. Interesting. The other thing about Moyes' comments was he said, I don't know if it was in that interview, but he said about wanting players over 25 with Premier League experience. It's quite interesting. Because obviously, I think I've gone on this before, haven't I, on the pod, that it's all right signing younger players with potential, but you need a rump in your squad of 25 of players who who can come in and do a job for you. And I think we've got to show that's where, for me, that's where the shortage is at the moment. I think you're probably looking out of the 18 and 19 on that list. There's probably only 6 who fall into that category, which if you're thinking about 6 out of what you want is a squad of 25, that's not enough. We need to make sure that if we buy 5 or 6 players or bring players on loan between now and September, I would want at least 4 of them to be known, operators who can come into the Premier League and hit the ground running. that's what I want. I think that's what Moyes was alluding to.
Yeah, the Premier League experience is an interesting point because Moyes is obviously a bit of a stickler for that. And is it a bullet point you think that he might need to compromise on? You look at, I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but if you look at the likes of Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, say three, they do take gambles on players who don't necessarily have played in the Premier League with that experience and gone on to
taking gambles. We're taking gambles.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, Barry's. I mean, you'd argue that he's played that half the season or less than half the season. Alcaraz is still a gamble because you're not seeing him before. He's been at Southampton, so they're gambles. We have got. O'Brien's gamble if you look at it that way. We had like top level experience in France. So other clubs, yeah, it's fine. But in terms of Moyes as a manager and what he's comfortable working with, and that's managers have different views and different strengths. That is the type of person, that he trusts and that he wants in the team. And so it's what Moyes wants when he's comfortable as a manager, not copy what other people are doing. And I'm comforted by that. He doesn't see Everton as a team of a squad of 25, of which 20 of them are under 23. They're all like good potential players, but will they all work out? You want 10 out of 25 to be hit the ground running players who know what the Premier League's about. And I think we've got a shortage in that group at the moment by about 4.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, let me clarify before we move on. And I don't want to go over all ground, but I think the core 14, 15 players that Moyes used when he first came in and took Everton on to a run of form that was comparable to a Europa League place is still in that squad with clearly 2 or 3 improvements. If you want to include Travis, as the second string goalkeeper, I'm happy not to include him. Barry will clearly play more. Hopefully, he's going to score more than Calvert-Lewin. I think Decore probably could have been useful in terms of just being there and the way he plays, but we want to move away from the Decore style of play. Alcaraz comes in and hopefully changes how Everton play. So those 2, for me, are an upgrade on what we've already have. There's no question, and it's the utmost priority that we need a right winger and a right back as well. But I don't want the feel-good factor from the back end of last season to disappear. We went on a bit of an undefeated run, beat some big teams, and Newcastle was going for the Champions League. And now I just feel like that's all kind of being surrendered on the back of what is quite clearly a bit of a lull in the transfer market, which is going to pick up, and it's only being emphasised, I get it, by 1 or 2 bad results on the pitch. So I'm not being negative.
Yeah, I mean, maybe those bad results on the pitch are coming because they're weaker than they finished the season. But that's it. But look, I mean, and what I'm not saying is that Everton have adopted the wrong policy yet. I think that to make progress, you need to get rid of the likes of an Ashley Young and Abdoulaye Doucouré and bring in someone better. So far, they're only halfway through that stage. They've got rid of them. Now they've got to bring the players who are better. And that's the difficulty that Moyes has got as we kind of start this debate on. They've got squad players and they've got young players. So you don't go into you don't buy every single player with the same mindset. You're buying some for the future, some for now, aren't you? Of course you're doing. And what they really need to do right now is they need to start adding the quality on top of it. And that's where they're having the difficulty, because the quality players are going to make a difference out of the starting lineup. And the ones that are wanted that cost more money and have more options and are wanted by other teams. That's where the challenge is. And they're the ones that Everton need to find a way of getting over the line. And probably the biggest thing that Everton need to do over the next week or 2 is work out where they actually stand in the market and whether or not they can attract these players. Because if they get to a point where they decide that they don't think they can, then obviously they might have to compromise and start bringing in more players just for the immediate future rather than for the mid to long term future. But hopefully we don't get to that point.
I'm conscious of time here as well. It's just that, Joe, you're closer to this than anybody. Are we being hampered by the fact that we've got 2 of our sort of transfer committee type organisation, whatever you call it? Do you think that's hampering us at the moment, that we haven't got the full roster of people involved in the decision-making process and their contacts and so on and so forth? Is that hampering us that we're not playing with the full deck in terms of, people on the ground doing the jobs?
I mean, I think there's no doubt that once everyone's in and got their feet on the table and got a working relationship together, so for instance, in 12 months' time, I think Everton will be in a much better position to approach this strategically.
Yeah.
I think if you look at Everton came into this summer off the back of a season or the end of a season, which obviously done really well on the pitch, But Angus Kinnear was still working away at Leeds, and you had the outgoing Felwell, the outgoing Dan Purdy. You had Moyes, who is a significant voice in this, and you also kind of had the fledgling relationship, and obviously this won't be without hurdles as well, of between Finch Farm and the Freaking Group as well. So we kind of went into this summer with a lot of moving pieces, and I think as a result of that, and a lot of new relationships being formed, and a lot of people kind of poking away at each other to try and work out what they did, and I think that's certainly something that once Everton got to a point where Moyes was happy that Everton were safe. Obviously, if we remember, we knew they were safe for a long time before he admitted it, but then he moved on to try and basically to establish what he would have to work with this summer, what the Freakins were going to be like to work with, what his budget would be, and things like that. And I think perhaps the fact that some of these relationships were so fresh was probably got them off on a little bit more of a back foot than we'd have liked to. But I don't think that has necessarily hampered them that much, in the sense that I think Moyes has been relatively happy to identify targets, and the club have been relatively happy to pursue them for him. Yeah. It's getting them over the final line. It's like Conceição. Everton wanted the winger Conceição from Porto. They moved for him, but obviously Juventus come in for him. Sometimes it wasn't necessarily a lack of identifying a player. It wasn't a lack of necessarily being able to pay enough money to be willing to prize him away from that club. Just somebody bigger just comes in and takes him off you.
That's what I said before, isn't it?
And that's where they are right now.
A lot of this stuff is just outside of our control, isn't it, really? It's just something that Kinnear said. He said the talk about bringing Cox and Smith in and saying we've got, I can't remember his words, sort of we've set it up so the transfer committee or whatever is that it might have said they can't fail or reduces the chance of failure, which I get. I sort of understand that. But within that, there's still 2 out of the 4 or 5 people involved who are not there at the moment. The biggest
voices in the transfer strategy are there already, aren't they? And I don't think that this is. We can argue, we can argue whether the right players that Everton should be targeting or whatever you're not. But I don't think the problem so far has been identifying players that Moyes wants, or the club trying to get them. It's that final stage. Look at Kenny Tete. Mentioned Conceição. Kenny Tete is another one. They've identified a player that they want. They've identified what they're willing to spend to him. They think they've got him over the line, and then last minute he decides that he wants to stay at Craven Cottage. And that, again, it just goes back to where we were right at the very start of this conversation, where the problem isn't necessarily identifying the players that Everton want and that Moyes wants. It's convincing them that Everton are a better project than where they're currently at right now. That's the problem.
A better project.
And one thing that I don't think TFG, Moyes, or whatever else is left of Everton, when you take those 2 voices away, one thing they don't want to do, and this is they don't want to then just pay the extra money just to get those players over the line. They don't want to, if Kenny Tete's, Fulham have come back to Kenny Tete and offered him a new deal. Well, I'm sure Everton could have, if he was that willing to come to Everton in the first place, I'm sure they said, well, we'll pay you even more money. There would have been a number that may well have got him over the line, etc. Because he'd already had a fresh contract offer from Fulham when he was considering joining Everton. But again, what they won't do, and this might be something else that they have to kind of, particularly when you look at centre midfield and right wing where they need players right now, one of the things they're going to have to do over the coming weeks is we might have to budge on one of our kind of fundamental principles of the transfer strategy. And if that's not going to be on quality, it might be that we might just have to pay over the odds for a few players just to get them in the door because we need them now. And those are decisions that are being weighed up.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. It's convince the players that the project is better than the other options that they've got. That's the thing. And sometimes you are right, and I've seen this happen with Everton before, and certainly other clubs is sometimes you can't afford a player, but you can't afford not to have them even more. And I think there's going to be probably 2 or 3 players between now and September where we might end up doing that just to get them through the door, purely on the basis that we can't afford not to have them. And that is the and I wouldn't have a problem with that as long as you're not stupid, which we have, as we well know. It's 2017 we were. That's what we did, wasn't it? But we paid over the odds for a lot of players.
One thing that we haven't mentioned as part of this conversation: the Freakins can have all the money in the world, but Everton are still bound by PSR. We're close to spending £50 million this summer without selling a high value asset. I think the last time we did that was 2020 when we brought in the likes of the core. I don't think we sold anyone of high value. We just ended up spending money that we thought we were able to. People like really need to think that it's incredible that we're going to spend £50 million so far. Obviously, you've got an update on Adam Asnu, which is going to take Everton spending close to £50 million. Like, I'm surprised that we're even spending that much, if I'm being totally honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think PSR is as much of a shackle right now. I think there's still a lot more.
But it still is, though, isn't it? It's still preventative of what we can do.
Still spend a lot more money, and they should be fine from a PSR perspective. So, obviously, how they want to spend it and where they want to do it is the question. So yeah, like it is going to be interesting.
Go on, Joe. You got an update on Adam Asnu anyway?
Oh yeah, just saying. I say medical's booked, and that's Everton are hopeful on that. There's an expectation he'll become an Everton, or hope he'll become an Everton player if all goes to plan, and that's to the point where they're hoping to, if things progress as they hope and expect them to, then he may well sign in time to join the squad out in America and meet his two teammates in Atlanta, which is where Everton are spending the latter part of their summer series tour.
The dry patch will be over then, Gav. We'll have another player in for left-back cover, which is
what we needed,
we've been crying out for.
Absolutely different. I hate that word, profile. It's one of them words.
You love it, though.
Yeah,
you say it all the time.
Different type of player to Mykolenko, from what I believe. So that gives us a few more options there. It's just that Beevy's played as a winger, hasn't he, at a certain point. So, yeah, I think that's a really good move. That's the type of thing where, if you're Moyes, what you can tell, these are the defenders I've bought in the past, and this is what I've done with them. And if you explain that to a player, even though it's from abroad, I think Moyes' track record in developing defenders is second to none, and that's what it's about. What attracts you to clubs? I think that would be a selling point, really, if I was a young defender. I think Moyes himself and his track record.
He did put a warning out, though, Moyes, didn't he? Said he's still one for the future as well, so he might not necessarily just go straight in.
We know that, but he's not going to... As long as you've got a solid, dependable left back, for all his sorts of shortcomings that people point out about Mykolenko, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay, probably finish off. Got to go, haven't we? But, did you enjoy that, Joe?
Yeah.
What time's the West Ham game then? It's 11, 12 o'clock our time, is it?
10:30, is it?
I think the Man United game's 10 o'clock.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Are you going to be staying up for it, Gav?
When is it? Wednesday? Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'll watch it on catch up on Everton TV.
You going to stay up for it?
Oh,
yeah, should be working.
Yeah, I'll be working for it. Yeah.
Any final points then before we do go on? Well, I think we're going to do a podcast tomorrow, Tuesday. Me and Connor, because I'm not here Wednesday to do a podcast, so we want to get an extra show in. And also Wednesday, we're going to put a podcast out that Chris Beasley did over in America with Dan Meese. So keep an eye out for that. That's an audio-only podcast, by the way, so keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, lads, any final thoughts before we shoot off? Oh, all good. Yeah. I do apologise that I haven't been able to read out any comments or any questions, but we obviously got too engrossed in a back and forth debate there.
Have you seen any that you want
to... Not ones that have stood out, and I'd have to read them, and it'll be a lot of dead air.
That basically means they're all agreeing with you and disagreeing with him. He doesn't want to read them out, you know.
You can go back and look at them after the live's finished. I think so. I guess we can try and reply to some after the fact, and we'll see who won that one. In all honesty, I think we were just agreeing, just being.
I don't know about that.
Very debatable.
I don't know about that.
All right, we'll finish off now then. All right, well, give us some likes on YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify as well. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas and Gav Buckland, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.